Okay, so let's get started. First of all, I would like to thank the Developer Student Club of Bikaner Technical University for inviting me for such a session. And it's really a great pleasure to have you all with us and like to interact with you all. And I would have loved to like turn on my webcam as well, but because of some issue with my webcam, I'm not able to do that. But what's more important, I think, is this presentation and what we are going to see in this session, right? So feel free to ask any questions that you have at the end of this session as well. And in between, if you guys have some questions, you can put in the chat section as well. So a bit about myself first. My name is Rachit, and I'm upcoming SDE at Microsoft. This summer itself, I interned at Microsoft, and it was a great learning experience being at Microsoft as an intern. So I also, in my part time, and I also love to blog at Rachit Talks. That you can also search for it, and you can find it quite easily. So there, I share my experiences about uh, about my interviews that I went through, and like my academics, as well as the projects that we need to do in academics, right? So I share a lot about those stuffs over there, so you can probably go and check it out. And I will also tell you like you can also find me on LinkedIn as well, right? So you can just search my name on Google and you can get those links. So just a second, let me check.
Actually, I have shared the link of blog with you in the comment section, guys. So you can check from there too.
Yeah, thanks, Hitesh. Thanks. And I see 21 people are there as of now, and I think we are good to go with the content for now. Okay. So, firstly, uh, as I told, I also blog at my free time in at Rachit Talks. So you can visit that link and you can like learn a lot of stuff which I might not be able to cover in this session because of time constraints. Okay. So firstly, the first thing that comes to mind of every software developer or like every aspiring software developer, right, is computer coding must, right? So that's a simple question, and we all face trouble in it. Like we see people doing a lot of coding, a lot of challenges going on, lot of hackathons going on, and whenever we sit for placements or any internships, we find a coding round is must, right? The first round is itself the coding round, right? So the short answer is yes. The competitive coding is must. You cannot skip it if you want to be a successful developer. Okay, and we should not stop here. Let's discuss why. Why competitive coding is important, right? So to understand the analogy between competitive programming and or exercising, it is like exercising, you may say, or mathematics. Both can relate to it. So what happens? Like suppose you are going to gym, right? For the first week, you will have pain in your hands and whatever exercises you perform, right? So, but what happens as you do practice and like your body gets in synchronization with it? You will have a lot of fun doing it, right? And you will get a good posture. You will get good, you say, good health and all, right? So computer coding is similar to it, right? In the first thing, right, or for the first few months when you are new to it, you might face a lot of struggle. You might think that problems are not working out. So we'll discuss all those stuff, right? How we can get started with it, and I will try to cover as much as my insights and my experiences, how you can start from scratch in computer coding and like how you can do good at it, right? So computer coding is a must thing, and the answer to why is very simple. Uh, Computer coding builds a reasoning in your mind, right? When you go to companies which provide you jobs or internship, whatever, right? You will be doing projects over there. You will be building things up, right? And if you do not know computer coding, it will be very difficult for you to build optimized solutions for them, right? They are not just looking for solution; they are also looking for optimized solutions so that their resources may not be wasted, right? So if we move a bit forward, the question arises in our mind, okay, competitive coding is much like an exercise. If you don't do exercise just for yourself also, your health will degrade, right? But the next thing that comes to our mind is, do I need to be a 6 or 7-star coder? Or if you are watching good Mirzapur, right, you need to be a good way of programming. Like he used to do, if you guys know about him, he used to do push-ups whenever he gets time, right? Because he wanted to be a state level wrestler, right? But the thing is, do we need to be a 6 or 7-star coder really to get into FANG? FANG basically stands for Facebook, Amazon, and Apple, Netflix, Google, right? They are the top 5 companies, you might say, in America. So the answer to this question is no, not at all. Even I am not having 6 or 7-star rating in CodeChef or such a stuff. So the thing is, if you're up to, like you say, even if when you watch great competitive programmers, right? If you're into the competitive coding, you might be knowing Gennady. He is the world's best competitive coder, and you can easily find his name. You can just search it on Google and you will find it. So I think I have opened his profile as well. So let me see. Okay, let's search for Gennady. So if you see Gennady CodeChef, yeah. So this is the guy. He is from Belarus, and he is global rank 1 as well as country rank 1. So he is the best competitive coder in the world as of now. And do we need to reach this level actually to get into good companies? The answer is no, not at all. The point that the companies are looking for you is that you must be better than at least 95% of the people if you want to get into some good product based companies, say Microsoft or Google, right? So you need not to be top 0.01%, but you should be better than 95%. That is, if they are like there are 40 people in your class, at least you should be in top 2 3 in coding when it comes to coding, right? When it comes to reasoning or problem solving. So to get a rough idea, if you're 4 or 5-star coder at CodeChef, I think you can go for good product-based companies. 4 or 5-star will do the job, but 3 or 2-star. If you're 3 or 2-star, maybe you need to work some bit more about your coding skills, and definitely you can work on it. And one more thing that I want to discuss, as I told you. It is about exercising, like it is just like physical exercising. So even if you see great competitive code programmers interviews, and when they talk about competitive coding, right, they will tell you, if you are into competitive programming for 1 or 2 years constantly, definitely I can reach up to 5-star in. Most of the 5 stars are not, you say, from many of you guys will not find them from some like IIT or like NITs, right? It's not about that stuff. It's about consistency and your will. Recording, say, for 1 year, and if you are really into it, I think you can go up to 5-star in 1 year quite easily. So, and that's what you need when it comes to product. Right. So now the second thing is about competitive programming is where can I start from, right? There are a lot of resources, CodeChef, Codeforces, Geeks for Geek, HackerRank. They create a lot of confusion for beginners, right? If you're from in first year or second year, right? So in my opinion, like the best place to start with competitive coding is HackerRank or Geeks for Geek. Why so? Because the problem there are like meant for beginners and for intermediate programmers. If you see the CodeChef platform, the long challenge you see, like approximately say 6 or 7, 8, 9 problems are there which you need to solve in 10 days or 11 days. What happens is that is good for building your reasoning, right? But that won't help you in qualifying the interviews, because in interviews you won't be getting 10 or 11 days, right? So you should practice to solve problems in, say, half an hour or 45 minutes, and actually problems in CodeChef are meant for increasing your reasoning, right? And you will find that most of them are not specific to data structures and algorithm. Like they won't require you to, like, say, if there are 10 problems, it won't be the case that in 9 of them some data structure is being used, like heap or stack. Some, mostly they are mathematical and like bit manipulation, they are from that area, right? But when it comes to in product based companies, they are oriented towards data structures and algorithms, because the work is quite different, right? If you are a great competitive programmer like Gennady, Gennady, by the way, he's not going to join any organization in the world, not even Google, not Microsoft. So the thing is, what we do in development, it relates much to data structure and algorithms. So in product-based companies, they will be more willing to ask you questions related to that. And in Geeks for Geeks, you can find quite easily. You can just do filters, and it's not about just Geek for Geek. Whatever platform you use, Lead Code is also good. What I'm trying to tell you is, try problems based on data structures and algorithms much more, because they will be on higher priority when it comes to interview rounds, as well as the coding rounds of the like companies like Google and Microsoft. So starting can be done from HackerRank and you say Geeks for Geek, and once you're able to solve medium level problems over there, you can move to CodeChef for some better problems or Codeforces. But start from there. Okay, now one more question that comes to our mind is, should I solve questions topic wise or company wise, right? In Geeks for Geek also, we have topic wise questions and we have company wise questions, right? So I would suggest if you have more time, right? Say suppose you are in first year or second year of your college, solving questions topic wise should be your priority, because phase coding career, right? Suppose you about linked list, YouTube or from Udemy, from where it doesn't matter, or from any editorial or blog. You read about it. Now you want to practice questions on it, right? Why will you go for something asked in Amazon if it belongs to heaps, right? Doesn't make sense. So when you're in learning phase, when you're learning data structures and algorithms, you should solve topic-wise questions. And solving topic-wise, how it should work is, suppose you read dynamic programming, that is also a topic, right? Bit manipulation is also a topic. So once you read any topic, say array, linked list, dynamic programming, any algorithm, anything, solve questions on that particular topic. Don't rush into companies, okay? And the solving of those questions should be done in such a manner, like solve 2 or 3 easy problems, or maybe school level problems. Don't it should not be a priority like to go first on hard problems. You will get exhausted. Solve some easy problems, 2 3 problems. Like for DP, we all make factorial program, right? So try to make factorial program with dynamic programming. That should be your priority on first, right? Once you get the concept of dynamic programming embedded in your mind, move to medium level problem. That should be the approach. And medium level problems, if you are able to do medium level problems, mostly you will be able to solve the problems asked in like Google or Microsoft. But if you want to go a step beyond it, you can solve few hard level problems, but medium level problems should be a priority when we talk about platforms like Geeks for Geek. And then, as I told you, which level of programming problems are generally asked, low, medium, or high. So mostly, if I say if 5 programs are asked in your whole interview process, 1 of them will be easy, 3 will be medium, and 1 will be hard. Okay, so no one is wanting you to be 6 or 7 star coder, as I stated earlier. You should be clear with your concept fundamental, and you should be a good programmer, not the best one in the whole country, but you should be in the category good, right? So medium level problems are the most asked problems whenever it comes to any company or anywhere. Most probably medium level problems will be asked, until and unless you are going for some, say, international Olympiad in informatics, right? There is no point in asking medium level problem, because guys like Kennedy will be sitting there, right? But when we talk about placements, medium level problems will do your job. Okay, then if we talk about a bit more in competitive programming itself, how should we approach any problem, right? So the thing is, approaching any problem, for different problems we have different approaches, but one common approach, or one you can say a common path which applies to any programming language, or sorry, not any programming language, any programming problem, is first read the question properly. Okay, even if it seems easy to you or you have done it earlier, it doesn't make a difference. If you are sitting in an interview or any coding round, if the problem even seems easy, okay, don't get overexcited. Read it properly and understand it very well. And after understanding it, one thing that I can tell you is see the time constant or space constant which are generally given, right? So suppose I think most of you will be knowing that a computer can perform 10 raised to power of 9 operations in 1 second. Generally, mainframe computers perform this much operation. So why that number is important? Suppose input is 10 raised to power of 12, right? Number is there, some coding problem is there, and we are having some inputs over there, n, right? Integer. An integer can go up to 10 raised to power of 12, right? And you are building an algorithm to solve the problem which is of order of n. Okay, so you see, in worst case it will take 10 raised to power of 12 iterations, or 10 raised to power of 12 it will go rounds, right? But order of n problem won't solve your problem over there, right? It will come as time complexity, it will come as TLE, right? So when you see the time constant as well as the space constant, you must get an idea of what kind of algorithm you have to build, whether it should be order of n, whether it should be order of log n square, n cube, whatever. So once you're seeing any problem, even if it is easy, see the solution that you have in your mind, the algorithm that you want to implement, will it be able to beat the time complexity needed? Otherwise, what will happen? You will put 1 hour of your time in doing it, and ultimately what will happen? The code will give TLE, you won't be able to solve other problems, and you will be out of the race, right? So the idea is read the question, understand first that whether your solution will work or not using those constants. They are given just for that purpose. If you know why they are given actually for, and then only you should implement your problem, right? And it's better, like when you're practicing problems, right, not in a coding round, it's better if you can write it on paper first, your approach on paper. And even if you're doing it in a coding round, don't make it in your mind. You might think that okay, it's working, but when you do it on paper, you will realize, okay, I'm missing this particular edge case, I'm missing that particular edge case, and that will help you to build your solution in one go. Okay, and if you build it in one go, you will save a lot of time for other problems. So it's better if we do it on paper rather than just in our minds, right? So that's a basic approach, and depending upon the problem, the approaches can be different, but these 3 steps, they are common for any coding problem which you will ever encounter in your life while practicing or while giving any coding round. Okay, now one hot question that comes in our mind, or the beginners at least, is which language shall I use, or which language should I use, right? So it's up to you. You can use C++, Java, both works, and mostly in any coding interview or coding round, these 2 are will be provided. And even Python is also there. They are accepting Python solutions, but there is a priority among these languages, right? So if you're new to it and you don't have any, like suppose you don't have already commanded a particular language and you are looking for some advice on which language shall I do in competitive coding. So I would suggest C++ is the best choice when it comes to competitive coding. Why is it so? Because C++ is comparatively faster than Java and Python, and also it has a standard template library, STL. You guys must have been knowing about it, and otherwise you can check out about it on YouTube. There are lots of video about it. So it makes the job of programmers quite easy while doing competitive coding. And also Python is also there, and you might say that it is most easy to write in Python, right? But those guys who know Python, so Python is also my primary language. Whatever I do mostly it in Python. But the thing is, for some of the coding rounds, when you will be sitting in some of the coding rounds, you will see. Actually, I have witnessed this thing that once you write a code in Python and the same code in C++, C++ got submitted, but Python gave you TLE, right? For Python, you need to optimize it a bit more. So to be on the safer side, I would suggest if you are beginning your competitive coding career and you are in a need to select any language, C++ is the best choice as of now. Otherwise, you can go with Python or Java as well. If you see top competitive coders, most of them do in C++, but some of them also use Python, which are like 6-star or 7-star. So it doesn't make any difference which language you use. But the thing is, C++ is still, I would say, a priority among coders when it comes to competitive coding. Okay, and one more thing that we need to discuss in here is when shall we see the editorials, right? So the thing is, editorials are meant for being seen, right? That's why they are being written, and we must see them. But the thing is, at least you should try for a problem. At least I would say 30 to 45 minutes. If you are given 30 to 45 minutes of your time in solving any coding problem, you can, and if you are not able to do it, you can see the editorial and don't directly see the implementation, right? The code. That's not the way it should be done. First, see the theory part of the tutorial. Okay, if it makes sense to you and you think, okay, I can now code it, then go for it. Otherwise, if you see the theory part and it doesn't make any sense, then only go to the code. Seeing the code should be on your last last point on the list. But the thing is, you should not be stuck with the problem the whole day, that you are not able to solve any problem and you are stuck at a particular problem. That should not be the case. Sit for a problem around 30 to 45 minutes, and if it makes if you don't get any lead, see the theory part of the editorial right there, and if it doesn't make any lead also, then you can go for the coding part. Okay, so these are some of the resources that I would suggest. You will get this PPT. I would ask to guys who we can share this PPT. So these are the resources that you can use if you want to learn competitive coding free, not paying anything. So let me show you something. Where these will be guided. So actually, I told you about this guy, right? Kennedy, who is the topmost programmer. But there's another guy, right? His name is Eric Doe, if you guys know about him. He's also a great, actually, competitive coder, and he is also giving a lots of tutorials on YouTube. Okay, so you see, he's a legendary grandmaster. Like, and you can say that he's among top 10 programmers in the world, and he has a YouTube channel over here, and lots of videos are there. So about algorithms, and you will find a lot of stuff which you can actually learn directly from a world-class competitive coder. So I have shared the link of this guy in this. The first link is for that guy, and then there are some other great tutorials. You might be knowing Rachit Jain. He's a great guy, and he's doing a lots of work for student community. So you can see a lots of videos related to what you need actually. There's nothing waste here, and you can go through these all things. It's great if you can watch these as well. And the third thing that I want to share is the last one is this I deserve, right? So they are not much subscriber of it, but I would suggest students that it is a great place if you want to learn, especially your algorithms thing. So you see, there are lots of videos on algorithms. You can like checking if a binary tree is balanced or not, and a lot of stuff is there. A lot of algorithms are there. Whatever you need to practice for your coding rounds, if you even practice these much content, I think you will be able to do at least some part of the coding round, and not some. Believe me, if you follow these 3 YouTube channels and you can do some research on your own. Mostly things will be clear to you, and it would take some time to learn on your own, but these 3 channels are great to learn. So, okay, just a second. Let me see if any query is there. Okay, so I think C++ is preferred because some more questions are put like what are we? Yeah, so yeah, actually in Python, there are some advantages of Python, and for some there are some advantages of C++. But like in Python, you don't need to like count of like if there's a big calculation over there and a lot of big numbers are going to be involved, right? In Python you do not need to worry about large numbers and overflow, nothing like that. So if I encounter any problem regarding large numbers, I go with Python. But generally C++ is good as well. So they have both of them have their own priorities and the pros and cons, you say. And you can learn, if I told you, if you know Python you can continue in Python, but if you're starting to learn, C++ is the better choice. Okay, so okay, I will come to this question. Okay, I will come to your questions later in the section. So because if I do them right now, we'll miss a lot of concepts. So I will come to these things as well. Just wait for some time. Okay, so yeah. Now let's come to data structure and algorithms. We talked about computative coding a bit, right? How we can improve it and what we all need for computative coding. So data structure and algorithms is the most important thing that is taught to you in entire undergraduation, I would say. Why? Because most of the subjects in like our Indian education system is a bit lagging behind, if you say, with the current world's what you say demand. But data structure and algorithm you say is the core of computer science and engineering. So you must learn this subject with highest priority. And apart from data structure and algorithms, if I talk about academics a bit, so there are few topics in academics that are most important and you must go through them, like database management system, DBMS is important, networking is important, and operating system, compiler. These are some hot topics which will be even asked in your interviews when you go for, when I went for Microsoft, right? On in my last interview for the internship, interviewer asked me to write the pseudo code of deadlock prevention algorithm, any deadlock prevention algorithm. So if you know operating system, you will be knowing what a deadlock is, and once you know deadlock, you know there are algorithms to prevent a deadlock, right? So he asked me to do that, and that if I haven't done that, maybe I wouldn't have got that thing, right? So there are some topics in undergraduation that you should not skip, like operating system, DBMS, and compiler, apart from data structures and algorithms. And it's especially for CS people, because for if you are from other stream like electrical and electronics, something like that, maybe you won't be asked such questions, but it depends on the interviewer as well a bit. So on your side, you should be prepared if you can, right? Okay, now the this question is very good. Which data structures are generally asked in FANG companies? That is, problems which are asked in there, they will involve which data structures? The easy ones that we study, array or say linked list, which we study in our earlier, you say, a part of DSA, or the higher ones like graphs and trees and heaps, they all. So trust me with that, mostly higher data structures are asked. Okay, so what I mean by that is when you go for interviews for product based companies, right, there will be a few questions on arrays and there will be a few questions on linked list, right? But mostly students prepare for them because they are a bit easier when it comes to graphs and trees, right? So even if you don't have, even if you have some knowledge, you have some practice on, you say, arrays, it becomes easy to solve a new question, right? Because arrays don't have much, you say, much variation of question when it comes. But for graphs and from trees point of view, when it comes, if some question is changed over there, it will be much more difficult for you to implement it correctly, right? So if you're preparing for a good product-based companies, you should never skip understanding higher data structures completely, like you say, graphs and trees and all. So there are a lot of algorithms over there as well. You should not only constrain yourself to say array or linked list or stack or queue. Go for some higher, like study those data structures as well. Heap, because most of people skip heap, and interviewer can ask any question on heap because he is expecting you to understand it. So, and if you don't know heap, if you don't know anything about heap, how can you even like you cannot make a heap, right? If you don't know what a heap is, right? So I would say go for cover all data structures, don't skip anything. And because later ones like graphs and trees, they are a bit complex when we have to implement it. So practice them a bit more before going into your interview rounds. Okay, now where can I practice DSA based problems? So I told you Geeks for Geek is a great place to practice DSA specific problems. You can apply filters like array and linked list or graph, whatever, and algorithms as well. You can do you say dynamic programming problems, and so like Geeks for Geek is a great place, and you can try other platforms as well. But I would say Geeks for Geek is a great place to if you want to start with, and even if you're an intermediate programmer, Geeks for Geek is a great place to learn. Other places are like Lead Code, and there are other places as well. It actually doesn't matter if I say honestly, it doesn't matter. Many of my friends who got internship, they practiced on CodeChef. Some of them practiced on Lead Code. So that's a crap that you have to do it on this platform only. It actually, I would suggest try different platform and see where are you more comfortable with difficulty level increment and all things. Try things and explore platforms, and don't limit yourself to only Geeks for Geek. Try CodeChef as well, but Geeks for Geek you can start with. It's easy to start with it. So that was about data structure and algorithms in short, you say. So okay, let's come to that was all about DSA and competitive programming, right? To solve coding problems and all. Now let's come to projects or you say development area. So the very first question is why companies ask for projects, right? Maybe some of you know the answer, but let me tell you an analogy between projects and you say cricket. Okay, so what happens is suppose you want to select a team for your say for your colony, okay, a cricket team, okay. So what you will say is you will pick some of the guys who have played cricket, right, earlier, because Virat Kohli is not in your colony, right? You cannot take him, right? But suppose Chintu is there and Mintu is there, so you will take these two people and like who have played cricket in their entire life, once or twice, or maybe who regularly play. So the idea is you want those people who at least know how to handle a bat, right? How to hold a bat. What are the rules of cricket, right? And who can at least put a chance of your winning, right? When it comes to the tournament. Same thing comes to companies, right? So once you get into say Amazon or Google, right, you won't be doing competitive programming. There is not any scenario like that. It won't be there that employees from Google are having coding competition with employees of Microsoft. Okay, that's not the case. Hackathons may be there, but generally what is there is people will be involved in development, teams will be involved in development, they will be building websites, they will be doing web development, iOS development, all kinds of development that you can think of. They will be building security, they will be doing lots of stuff, but mostly they will be targeted towards some kind of development, right? Some kind of project will be there. So companies don't want you to build Facebook before getting into say Microsoft, right? It doesn't want that. If it that was the case, right? Why don't you just launch it and you have your own company, right? So companies don't want quite big projects from you, but they want you to understand how to make a project, how things work, and some basic stuff. That's why they ask for projects, so that you know what is a project is, and you have some idea of development, right? That is, you know how to hold a bat in cricket. That's about that. So what kind of projects do I need to do? So actually, when it comes to kind of projects I lead, actually, a lot of students ask me that should I go for some very complex projects, say some AI stuff and all, and like very good projects, you say. So, or shall I make some simple website or some simple calculator app, or what shall I do in a project, right? Because I said in the previous question that you don't have to make Facebook for a project, right? So by Facebook, I mean total working Facebook. You can make front end part and a bit of stuff, but you don't have to make entire Facebook from scratch. So what kind of projects do I need to do? The answer is you should do projects actually which tells that you have some idea how things work in a project. Okay, so like as I told you, the companies are looking for guys who know how projects work, how they interact with backend, how to build front end which interacts with backend, right? How database works, right? So you have to make such kind of stuffs, right? Like say, suppose I made an e-learning website, right? Just a demonstration website where user can log in. So if you can log in and sign up, you have built the authentication part of a project, right? So if you get into Microsoft and there is a project where authentication is required, you can do it, right? Company knows that you can do it because you have done it earlier. So okay, now the website shows courses, right? And I can add some courses on the back end which get displays on the front end, right? I can make a purchase on from front end, order gets displayed on back end, right? So you know how things work, how API is implemented, right? How we are calling the API from front end, which is doing work some on back end, right? So we will not go into the technicalities here, what is an API, how it works, but what I want to tell you is, when this question comes to your mind, what kind of projects do I need to do? Just see what companies are doing. Say Facebook, when you hit a like button, right? What do you think? If you again open that post, the like will be there from your side because the data is stored on backend side that you have liked the post, right? So if you just make the front end part, which is not like having any interaction with database, so you cannot store any kind of information like that, right? So I told you guys that like your project shall have basic functionalities implemented like database and APIs and front end part, back end part. These are basic you say basic things when it comes to a project. But at the same time, it should not be a very much complex thing. You don't have to hurt yourself building a Facebook kind of thing, entire Facebook. Okay, so what you can do is you can start with simple applications. Say you made an app, made an calculator. Okay, so I made a calculator. Then over the period of time, I improved it. Right now, the calculator is supposed live on some. I have deployed that calculator, right, and I can use it. Okay. Then suppose I made something else. So in that manner, suppose an e-learning website, or suppose uh, I will give more resources to you where you can get more ideas of how projects you can do. So what I mean to say in a nutshell is don't think about making very much complex projects. Your project should be enough so that you can talk about it to the interviewer for say 15 minutes or 20 minutes. You can tell how it affects society or how can it have some positive impact on society. If it is something that you made for social impact, that's a great thing, and you can talk about it. So those guys are looking for such stuff. They are not asking you to make Tesla, right? Tesla kind of stuff. Okay, so I hope the point will be clear as we move forward. So do projects need to be of advanced level? No, not at the beginning. And even intermediate projects are okay to go for any interview. But if you are willing to build advanced level project, then this should not be questioned in first place, right? If you're some guy who wants to make some advanced stuff, why are you doing it for some company, for some interview, right? That should not be a priority. Your priority should be that project, whether you get the job done, whether you get the interview qualified or not, right? For interviews, I would say intermediate level projects are okay to go. And by intermediate level projects, what I mean is those projects, say, if I talk about the stuff that we learn in academics, like which interact with database and which have some, you say, responsiveness, and front end part is good looking and it is interacting with back end part, you have implemented APIs, these kind of steps, if you have done and if you have presented in a good way, and you know, and if you can talk about it to the interviewer will ask, what is the use of this project, right? He will ask like, why did you get that, from where did you get the idea of doing it at the first place, right? So these are the questions that will be asked. Okay, he will not go into the too much technicalities of the project, like tell me the whole source code, read it to me in one go. It won't be like that. Okay, so I hope you guys get it. And then the thing is how to learn technologies to do a project. Okay, so because to do a project, right, you need to learn some technologies. Like for say, if you want to do a web development project, right, for basic level you need HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, right? And if you go to more advanced thing, you need more frameworks like React. You need Django for backend, Node.js. So what should be the basic approach to learn any technology? The thing is, first explore things. Okay, so suppose you're confused whether you want to do web or Android or say machine learning. Okay, no problem, go to YouTube, search some cool web development projects, some cool Android projects, some cool ML projects. You will see a lot of stuff over there, right? Watch the videos and explore things a bit more, right? Once you're done with exploration, right, you will get a better idea which kind of development you actually want to do. Right now, suppose web development is what you want to do. So what you can do is, the thing is again the similar as competitive coding. Don't put a hard problem. Don't just install Django and start doing it. Okay, learn the basics of web development like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right? Once you're done with these three things, with these three things itself, you can build a great portfolio website for yourself, a resume for yourself. You can build a lot of stuff for yourself only with these three steps, right? So let me show you one thing that is being made with, if it is there, I will have to check it. Just a second, I will tell you what you can actually do with a basic website kind of thing. You can make a static website. So actually it is deployed on Azure and you all can see it. Okay, so this is a basic portfolio template which has been made with you say HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right? So here you can it is working, and you can have like contact section and all sections. This all is built with HTML, CSS, right? So even if you know about HTML, CSS, you can build great stuff. But when you will move for some higher level in web development, you will need more stuff like say Django, React, and okay. Okay, so I hope the concept is clear, right? We have to start with basic projects, but we have to go up till intermediate projects, those projects which have some database interaction, those projects which have some APIs implemented in them, those projects in which it is nothing like the one that I showed you. It was a static website. It shouldn't be like that, which are doing something which have some social impact. You can build those projects as well. So the level up to where you want to go, it depends on your curiosity, and never make any projects just to get into some company. Okay, if you are building that, you will always think of your level that you need to achieve for a project. But once you're building it out of curiosity, you will make great stuffs, and that will be much more appreciated by those companies as well. So the level depends totally on you, but don't start with higher ones. Build a simple resume for yourself and make some simple stuffs. And if you talk about difficulty, or what shall I suggest you to start with, web or Android, I would say web development is one of the easiest thing right now in technology, if you talk. And next is Android. You say Android thing is next to it, and then machine learning or data science or that stuff. So I would suggest you to start with web development, because for Android, mostly for some people there might be some problem with Android Studio. You are not able to run it on your system, right? So that situation arises with everyone. Initially, it was with my laptop as well, the earlier one. So web development is quite easy. It don't require that much power of system. It is lots of YouTube tutorials are there, lots of blogs are there. You can follow them easily and you can make great stuff. But the idea is simple. Start with basic thing, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, then learn more technologies, React.js, AngularJS, or one stack, whatever you want to learn. But begin with basic stuff and make basic stuff. If you have a calculator made solely by you, if you haven't cheated on it, I would say it's a great project, and you just need to improve yourself with the time. Okay, you have time, and companies will appreciate that thing. Okay. Okay, now what did I do in my project? So I told you yourself that you need to explore things, right? So I did the same when I was in second year and third year. So I have made projects on web development, like I told you, e-learning website, and currently I'm also working on an web development project. I will share it with you guys. I will show it to you. For the startup that I told, right? I think I told you guys I'm working with a startup as of now. So for them, I'm building a web development project, and I also made a React Native Android application, and I made machine learning projects like simple machine learning projects, text classification, image classification, and sentimental analysis, those stuffs. So I explored mostly both three domains, which are, you say, most people are into it. So yeah, I have done a couple of projects from web as well, from Android as well, and from machine learning as well. So I would suggest you to start with web, and then depending upon your curiosity and your interest area, you can continue in web only. But exploration is a very great thing. So you can try different stuff like machine learning. You can learn about those stuffs as well. But start with web. It's great thing to start with. So let me, before moving on, yeah, so this is the resource that I want to share with you guys. It's on Geek for Geek. Suppose you don't have ideas on computer science projects, so what you can do is you can just go to it. I think, yeah, I need to open it. So you just need to, here you get it. So the link will direct you to here itself. So you see, there are lots of projects depending upon the language itself, right? So project ideas are also there. Okay, so C++, Java, Python projects, lots of projects are there, right? So I'm not telling you to just copy paste it from here. What I'm telling is you can get idea of how projects are built, right? Face detection is there, coin detection is there, right? And like similarly in Python, you have Tkinter is a library in Python. They are making Notepad with Tkinter, color game with Tkinter. So you can get some idea from here, and you can even learn these projects. Just open any of these, try to understand the code. Don't just copy paste it, because I will come to it later as well. Because if you just copy paste stuff, that won't work with you in interviews. Actually, in my first interview, the interviewer asked me to explain some part of my code. So which I did as a project. Hoffman coding was the project. So it is a project based on data structure and algorithms. So he asked me to write a small pseudocode, say 4 or 5 lines. And if you just copy paste stuff, you cannot learn. You don't know anything about it. You will be in a great trouble, because companies will hate if you are cheating. If you are doing some small project, that is fine. But if you are cheating and you're just putting it on it without knowing what the stuff is going on in there, they will hate it, and most probably you won't be able to make to the next round, right? So don't just copy paste it. Try to understand the code, try to understand the logic, then only you can put it on your resume. And one thing that I want to show to you guys is, yeah, this is actually the website that I'm currently working on. So it is a functional website, fully functional website, almost for now. I think token expired. So what I want to tell you is, like, it is still in its development phase, not just completed yet. It is yet in development phase. What I want to tell you guys is, like, this is a project which involves say React.js and Django and all. So maybe you do not want to get into these much technicalities. Like, this is a fully, it will in few days it will be a fully functional, almost e-commerce website. If you visit the home page, you will see a lot of stuffs going on there. So maybe you do not want to get into this much at the first place, but what I want to tell you guys is I also started with basic stuff like calculator with Python, right? But then I moved to, when I started web development, I learned about HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Then gradually I improved myself and I learned React.js, right? I learned about Django, right? So things work that way. You do not have to be like the master at the first place, right? So explore things, and the thing that should be there is continue to improve yourself, right? That is the main point. Okay, so I think the idea of projects is clear. Okay, next thing that I want to talk about is resume. So we have some time and maybe we'll extend it to 15 minutes to take your queries. But okay, so this is also an important point. I will try to cover it ASAP. So resume is basically your first move, right? It is a, like you can say it is a chess game between you and the company, or the you and the employer. So resume is the first move from your side. If you do it correctly, you will get the response from the other side, right? Otherwise, there is no response you will get. So I have reviewed more than 100 resumes myself on LinkedIn to help guys, my connections. Those who are my connections, they might be knowing that I have done it 2 times. Resume I've reviewed almost 120 or 130, I guess I've reviewed in total. So after reviewing those 100 resumes, right, I got some insights. Some good resumes were there, some bad resumes were there. So there are some important points that I want you guys to go through when you're building your resume. That is this is from my experience and what I have learned from those 100 resumes, right? So the first thing is put up your career objective. Many guys don't put it up. They just start doing like putting skills and experience. So why is it important? Actually, you can skip it, but the thing is when you put up a career objective, right? The career objective means that the employer or the recruiter will understand that you have some objective in your life, right? You can put some great lines about yourself and what you want to do in your life, right? So it is not just about getting job with the company and getting salary, right? It is about growing in your throughout the period of time, right? So you must have a career objective with you, that what you want to do in your career, right? When you get into that company or some company, right? So that's why career objective is a good thing. If you place it, you can make it 2 or 3 lines. Don't make it 10 lines of something. No, 2 or 3 lines are more than enough. Then the thing is, project skill and experience section should be in upper part of your resume. So what I mean by that is I have seen many resumes, and maybe some of you also have that kind of resumes where these things, projects, skills, and experience are downside. Some other stuffs will be there, about me will be there, and like say education is there, right? So the third point states that put academics after projects, experience, and skills if your college is in tier 1 or tier 2, right? So what I am telling is not that tier 1 and tier 2 colleges students will only get the job, but what I want to tell you is when recruiters look at your resume, right? If you're from some, say, IIT or some great institute, right? It makes a difference. Whether you want to accept it or not, it will create a difference, right? So if you're not from tier 1 or tier 2 college, right? Why you need to put it on the upper side, right? You can put what makes a difference on the upper side. Like suppose you did a great project, right? Which is not done by from some guy who is studying in any IIT or an IT. Why aren't you putting it above your education, right? So when you build a resume, right, it's like recruiters get lakhs of or thousands of resumes, right? They don't go through all the resumes, because if they will go through all the resumes, it will take a lot of time and no hiring will be done, right? So what they do is they will just read few upper lines of your resumes sometimes, and if you're not putting something attractive in the upper line itself, maybe the rest of your resume won't be considered even, right? So you have to make your moves as soon as possible, right? So put some great projects, or put some great skills that you have, or put some great experience that you have. Suppose I have interned at Microsoft, right? And in my resume I put it at the last point, right? So what's the point of doing your internet Microsoft if you are putting it on the bottom side, right? You have to display, if you want to other to notice you, then you have to put it to their area of you say area of sight, right? You don't you I think you people got my point, right? That you have to put something on upper side like projects or experience, which will make a difference, which will make your resume stand out from others, right? The fourth thing is put links to projects. Suppose use GitHub, right? And if your project is live, you can put a link to that as well. Suppose I'm doing some project, I have made it and I have deployed it on GitHub. I have put it on GitHub, and I wrote it on resume, right? So why don't you put a link to it on resume? So suppose a recruiter can see it directly. Okay, so what it makes is it makes your resume more authentic. First thing, because recruiters understand that okay, this guy is putting a repository link. That means he has actually done that, right? He is not spamming us, right? So it's more beneficial if you put links to your projects. Many people don't put it, but I personally feel if you want your projects to stand apart from others, you can try this stuff as well. The fifth thing is achievement and award section should be there. It is a must section, but it shouldn't be on the top. You can put it after you say your academics or your projects and all. So if you have some great achievements, why don't you show it on your resume, right? It makes sense to put it. The sixth thing is I'm not talking about all those things that are to be present on resume. I'm just telling you some of the important things that must be there. There are a lot of things. There may be a lot of things that are present that should be present in a good resume apart from this. But these are some of the insights or some of the mistakes of a student that I have encountered. So I'm sharing with you all guys. So you have to put some extra stuff outside of the tech world, like hobbies, blogging, or something else. So what I mean by that is, suppose you are a blogger, right? You have some blogs for student community, or you have a YouTube channel, right? So once you put it on over your resume, right, it makes a difference. It creates a difference. What it makes a difference? Why does it make a difference? Because the people at the company will understand that this guy, apart from learning, is also helping others to learn, right? It should be a great thing which every one of us should do, right? Actually, and if you're doing it and if you're not putting it, that's a wrong thing. If you're doing it, you can put it over there, and it will also help others understand, recruiters understand that this guy is not just self-centered, and he is doing work for the community. Because development work or the job or getting job is not just about getting job or getting salary, right? It's about making others develop as well, right? So if you're doing such stuff, that's great, and put it on your resume as well. The seventh thing is put some position of responsibility. It is not mandatory. If you have some position of responsibilities that you have handled earlier, like some kind of mentorship that you have, suppose you have done or anything like that, you can put it on your activities section as well. Eighth point is you say understood. If you have good computer profile, you can put it up, but put it only if you have decent one, right? If you're a 2-star coder, I would suggest don't put it. But if you have decent one, put it. If you don't have decent one, try to make it 4-star and then put it. Okay. And then projects should be there. Some people don't mention any projects in their resume, so at least 3 to 4 projects should be there. And I would say 4 projects are like good to go as a fresher for anything that you for any company that you apply. The other thing is put your LinkedIn and GitHub profiles. That's just so that recruiters can see, like get in contact to you over there as well, LinkedIn as well, and GitHub to show your work. So you can put these profiles. People put Facebook profile and like other kind of stuff, but I would suggest put these social media if you want to put, and your email ID. And then other thing is try to keep constant styling, simple and readable template. Okay, so the thing is your resume template should be very much simple. Okay, the more simple it is, the better it is. Okay, so you do not have to be too much fancy, too much colors. You do not need to put that in it. make it simple, make it readable. The content is more important than representation, always remember. And what I mean by this is you don't have to mess up your representation. It should, if it is simple and if it is decent representation, then the content becomes more important than the representation, right? And even if you're like if you're and software engineer in say Google, and if your resume doesn't have any kind of representation of it, it won't make any difference, right? So representation and content both are important, but representation should be simple and readable, right? And the last thing is you can talk about some of your soft skill if the space is there, but this point is not mandatory and no one is asking you to put this. But if a space is there and if you think you need to fill it up, you can just fill it up with your soft skills, like good communication skills. And if some achievements are there in your soft skill, like debate competitions you won, anything like that, you can put it over there. So how to use the last thing is which I would like to discuss over here is how to use LinkedIn. If you guys are not on LinkedIn, if you might not be there, please go and create an account over there. It is one of the best thing that ever happened to developers, right? So make an account over there, and once you make an account, right, how to use LinkedIn, because once you make an account, you will see a lot of stuffs going on in there. So the thing is, you need to show your presence, right? You need to be active on LinkedIn. At least try to see things on at least once a day. I'm not asking you to stick to LinkedIn social media, but show your presence, right? You can at least see what's going on there. You can follow great people who are working in say Microsoft or Google or whatever dream company you have. You can follow them over there. You can see what's going on in their firms, what's going on in their lives, and how they are up to it, right? The other thing is build your network. As I said, you need to follow people that you admire, right? You can follow them, you can get in touch with them. You can you can ask them some suggestions that you need. Many students ask me as well. So mostly people will try to respond if they have some time. But even if someone not responds, right? Suppose, because that's not because he's not willing to respond, that because he is actually too much busy. Maybe that might be the case. So don't get frustrated if people do not respond, but try to build your network, try to get connected. And the more better network you have, the more opportunities will come to you, because once you follow those guys who are working in those tech giants that you want to work in, whenever an internship is open, generally you will find some kind of post from there. Then they will ask you to send their resumes for referral. And even if they do not refer you, at least you got the opportunity to understand that the opening is there, right? Many of you don't even know when Google opens its form for internship and like job, right? So you will get to know a lot of things once you get connected to them. So that's why you need to build your network. What you can do from your side is you can share demonstration of a project. Suppose you did some project, it's a cool stuff, and doesn't mean if it is an advanced thing or like something, you can, if you did a project and you can put a demonstration of that, right? And you can tell people that you are in learning phase. There's nothing like you have to be the master chef over there. Share a demonstration of your projects. It's perfectly fine. You can make a mini video about it, or you can just make a live website, and like you can deploy it on a live website, and you can just go let people go through it. Okay, so the other thing is share your stories. If you have some inspiring stories, you can share it with other people. They would love it. You can see the stories of others. I see a lot of guys over there who didn't got any job after graduation, and they maintained the flow of study, or they dedicated themselves, and after 2-3 years they are working at Amazon, they are working at say Coordination or something great, right? So you get to know a lot of inspiring stories, and you can, even if you have some inspiring story, you can also share it over there. again, you can share your learnings as well. Suppose something you learned from resumes from this seminar, right? You can share those learnings. You can tag me as well, and whatever you learn. Suppose you learned React, right? You can just share your learnings about React. You can help. You can write a blog about it to help others as well. So that's how LinkedIn works, right? There, people once you join it, you will find it to be quite different platform than other social media like Facebook and all, right? And even if you don't get appreciated at first, suppose you did a post, you got 1 like or 0 like or nothing at all, don't panic, don't get frustrated. It happens with all. The thing is, you should be dedicated enough to you will have to understand how you have to make things happen, right? And don't depend on others that they will like only, then I will post. There's no point in it, right? The day they stop liking, you will stop posting, right? That should not be the case. You will post, it's on them. If they like it, it's on them if they don't like it. But you should post your learnings, you should post your experiences, you should post your stories, right? As I told, you can write blog on something that you learned. You can share them. You can make a YouTube channel. You can share your learnings over there. You can write up on Medium. There are lots of platform, and even when you do these things, right, you can mention them in your resume that you are a blogger at this, and suppose whatever you want, right? That makes a positive impact of your personality to the recruiters. So don't think that it's a waste of time, or like you learn even when you write blogs, you will learn things. You will learn about the technology, and when you put it up, right, you will mention it on resume. So it is 100% uh, like sweets on both hands. It's that case. So don't think it's something waste. It will definitely help you when you get in your interviews. You can talk about them, because in HR round, HR will don't talk with HR will not talk about your technical things, right? He will talk about your personality, right? So there, when he will see, you can talk about those stuff, right? That you are helping community with this, that. So that's how things work. I hope you got that point. And then the last thing is share your achievement. Suppose you got some job at, say, XYZ company, or you got selected for MTech at IIT Delhi, you cleared UPSC, whatever it is, doesn't mean you have to be from development or coding background. Whatever achievement you make, right? Share it with others. It will inspire them as well. It will help them as well. It will build a better community for you as well. And you will not be knowing that who will need that help that day. And it's always good if you can share your achievements, learning stories, all these stuffs with them, guys. So okay, so that was from my side, and there are a lot of stuffs that I wanted to talk about, but the time is not there, I guess, and already we are past 3. So if I talk about those things as well, uh, it will create a mess for you guys. So we'll come to question and answer. So if you guys have any questions, you can start putting it uh, on the chat section. We can go
So
through it.
actually, I have got some questions. So but these are from the chats, and the first question is, so path according to years. What I mean to say is, for example, if a student is in third year, so what should he do from now on? So this is a
Okay.
getting question. Yeah.
Okay, so like if you are in third year, right? So what my suggestion will be is, first of all, if you are not good at problem solving from coding point of view, the first priority should be your say solving problems, DSA, data structures and algorithms. Uh, you can make some simple projects in parallel. I gave you the links to projects as well. You can go through them, you can understand them, you can put it on your resumes, and you can do that stuff in parallel with it. But the most important thing for a third year student is to practice data structures and algorithms. And if you have got some great internship or great job, then you can come totally to development. If you want, you can make website or whatever you want. But if you're searching for an internship or for a job, I would suggest practice DSA, because DSA, I told you, it is like a exercising, right? If you even if you are good at it right now, if you skip it for 1 month, again when you will do it, you will have pain in your head. Okay, so even if you are good at it, do one question at a time for until you get a good internship or job. And even if you love it, you can continue doing it. But the thing is, for a third year student, if he has good you say if he had good problem solving abilities, he can do development tasks like website or whatever he wants, Android development. But if you're not sure if you're good at it, firstly do DSA, solve problems, and that also easy and medium level. Don't go for hard. Easy and medium level problems on Geeks for Geek will do the job for you. I hope it helps you.
I think his doubt is clear. And one more question is what we want to do to get job as a web developer in Fang.
Sorry, Ayush, I missed you. Can you please repeat?
Yeah, sure. So what we want to do for get job as web developer in Fang? I think someone asked this.
Okay, so if you want to get into, suppose, web development in FANG companies, or actually they will be hiring for software development engineer, right? Mostly companies will open an internship for SDE role. SDEs are the ones that will be involved in doing web development over there. So what you can do is, even if you see the internship or job hiring process of Amazon or Google, mostly they have a coding round, right? And then a lot of technical interviews. Say for some campus placements, they might have 3 or 4 interviews, and for say if you go on campus, the number of interviews might increase. So the thing is, uh, if you are really interested in web development, make some projects in parallel with this. Suppose you can learn React and you can try to make a website. As I told, like I was building for a startup, you can, even if you are not able to do that much, if you can do that much, that's great. If you can do beyond that, that's much great. And if you cannot do that much, you can build a simple portfolio website or resume for yourself, and in parallel practice DSA, because doesn't matter if you want to go into Amazon or Google, if you are not good at problem solving, it won't be possible, I think, for you to get into there. So DSA, you say, let me explain the analogy. It will become clear to you. So the thing is, like we all studied up to 12th, right? To get into BTech, right? So in BTech, if you are studying computer science and engineering, probably most of you didn't even do it till 12th, right? But till 12th, you were studying PCM, physics, math, chemistry. We gave the IIT exam, right? Their math was there, physics was there, chemistry was there, no computer science was there, and you were doing computer science from your first day in college, right? So that something like that happens in interviews as well. DSA, or you say coding problems, generally they will be up to the coding round when you do it. But once you cross the coding round, you get the job or internship, you will be doing some development task, right? And that development task will require some of your coding skills, like some of the like you say, your knowledge of data structure and algorithms, but not all of it. But that's how selection criteria works, right? They will be asking you DSA based problems, and if you can solve them, you can get into it. And the idea is only simple, that if you can solve those problems, maybe you can be a great asset to the company. And later on, if even complex situations come in projects, you can build better optimized solution for them.
I think it's a way more specific answer. So if you guys have any doubts, yeah, you can ask. Okay,
So I see a couple of questions here. We have to do DSA and competitive programming parallel or complete one step. Okay, so Sandeep, I would suggest that competitive programming, you see, DSA is a subset of competitive, right? So, but mostly companies are targeted around DSA only, and so I would suggest you to first start with DSA. And if you are able to solve, say, medium level problems or gigs for gig within say 20-30 minutes, and like you are able to build the idea in 10-20 minutes and solve problem, write code in say 40-30 minutes. So what you can do is you can try some other like CodeChef and Codeforces. But the thing is, to start with, I would suggest solve problems which relate to DSA, because that's what will be asked mostly in your coding rounds in companies. But do not limit yourself to DSA. If you want to improve yourself, you can surely go for CodeChef and Codeforces. And the other thing that I see is, I hope that answered you, Sandeep. And the other thing is, cracking off-campus interview of a product-based company is really difficult task, as many candidates have DSA knowledge and some good project applies, but only some are selected. So what do you think? What helped you in your way? Okay, so to let you guys know that I applied off-campus for Microsoft, and the thing is, what helped me was my projects and like you say, both my projects and my coding skills. So how it works is, when you go off campus, as Anshul has said, there will be much more candidates, much more competition will be there. So I told you interviews might also increase. We got 3 interviews just for one day, and so how we do manage that stuff is, but if you're good at coding, right, it won't make a difference, much difference, whether you go on campus or off campus. Because on campus also, if you're in some say NIT or some IIT where that company is coming, right, the guys over there will be great, right? So it will surely do some difference. But if you're good at coding, you will be able to crack the interviews of off campus as well, and do some projects. I told you, even if you don't do some advanced level projects, your project should be sufficient enough that you can talk about it in an interview. Suppose, let me give you a practical example. I did a project based on DSA, Hoffman coding, right? Many of you might be knowing it, some of you might not be knowing it. So Hoffman coding is basically a technique to encrypt and like reduce the size of textual data, right? So interviewer asked me like, why did you implement this stuff, right? So you need to give some practical, like my project was based on some practical scenario. I can say like, I want my files to be encrypted, right? So that no one can see it. And at the same time, they get compressed, right? Like WinRAR, right? But WinRAR is not encrypting it, right? Because if you have WinRAR, you can decode it, right? So the thing is, when you make projects, right, ask to yourself first, why are you building this stuff? If someone asks you, why did you give your 10 days or 15 days or whatever time you applied in this project, you must be able to convince them that that time was worth giving it. And you must be able to talk about that project, what are the pros of that project, or what are the situations that project might be useful to people or to you only. It doesn't make any difference. But the thing is, you should be able to talk such stuffs regarding your project. The other thing is, okay, so I hope, Anshul, I answered your query. And from where we can learn DSA and web development. So Ayush, I would suggest that I have shared some of the links for DSA, some YouTube links, and you can go for some paid courses as well at Udemy or some other institutions. But I would say first start with YouTube and free courses. And if you feel that you need to go, and if you're not able to understand with them, then you can opt for some paid courses. And for web development, I would say basic web development, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, you can find tons of tutorials on YouTube itself. Web development is the best thing to start with because it is quite easy. And once you are done with basic thing, you can take up some Udemy course for web development, because for web there are lots of good Udemy courses as well for say 500 or 400. Even some React courses are also there. So what I'm telling you is, web development is something which you can learn without paying many rupees, say 10,000 or 5,000. You do not need to pay that much. You start with YouTube and then move on to Udemy courses. They are good at web. And I hope, Ayush, it answered your query. And then Sandeep asked how much time it will take to complete DSA, right? So depends, Sandeep. It will depend on the person itself, but I would say if you're talking about whole DSA from arrays up to heap, try, trees, everything, maybe if you practice them thoroughly, maybe 5-6 months will be good enough if you have some basic idea of DSA as of now, but you can solve like medium and easy level problem on each data structure. So 5-6 months will be good enough to have you intermediate knowledge, at least I would say. And then I hope it answered your query. And then Sachin asked how to get any information or update about any company. I think you want to ask. So I told you there are lots of stuffs you can use. The best one is LinkedIn as well. What you can do is just follow the guys working in a company that you want to know about, and generally they post about it. So what you can do is don't get connected to just one person working at Microsoft. Connect to 15 persons working at Microsoft, right? So at least one of them will give you the information, right? And the other thing that you can do is on the weekends when you have free time, just browse through the career sites of Google and career sites of Microsoft. They have their career site. If you type career site Microsoft or careers Microsoft, careers Google, careers Facebook, you will get their career site. You can just go through them once, and there are lots of opening there. You can apply filters regarding what you want, your place and all. So there are 2-3 ways you can get information or updates about such kind of internships. And from your college also, you can ask the training and placement cell coordinator of your college. It's the responsibility of those guys to help students get the idea or update about such things. So you can ask them that, sir or ma'am, whatever, we want updates about this stuff. So what our college can do about it. So your college can also arrange some people to look after that. The other Rishabh asked is, I was having a good hand on CPP around last decade or last December, but now lost my touch because of gap. How to bring back interest in coding? And now when I face problem, I get frustrated due to tree and graph. So yeah, Rishabh, I told you like it's like exercising. Until and unless you are a beast in exercising, you will forget things for if you leave it for 1 or 2 months. So the thing is, you must ask yourself why you first started, right? When you were having a good hand on CPP, right? So there would be some kind of motivation which will be guiding you in your life. So suppose you want to do something for your parents, or suppose you want to do something for you yourself. So that are the driving factors for many of the people who face trouble in life. So you can use them as well. And to bring back interest in coding, I would say, or bring back it is, or if you have no interest even to bring interest in coding, what I can tell you is follow some people, great people like you can follow Rachit Jain. He's a great guy, and if you watch his videos, you will get to understand a bit more about things, not just coding. And you can follow Aman Dattarwal. These guys, like on YouTube, they are doing great things, and you can follow them, and surely it will bring back your interest in not just coding. I would say it will bring back your interest in life as well. So like once you are having positive attitude towards life, you can, like for coding, you can watch some people like Gennady. You can take inspiration from Gennady. He's top one coder in world. Eric you can take motivation from him. And there are lots of guys you can follow, and you can watch lots of projects, cool things going on in Amazon and Google. So one thing that I would like you guys to tell you is Google actually did a project, Google Tulip, right? So in YouTube, if you type like I'm telling how to get things into motivation, right? So if you in like this is I deserves, but if you type Google Tulip project, so okay, just a second. So if you watch these, actually, I will tell you, you can watch Google Tulip project. It is a project from Google. So what they did was they applied machine learning and on the plants, and what they did was they converted their chemical changes and all things. They studied them. What happens when you pluck a leaf of a flower? What happens when you shout at a plant? And what happens when you uproot it? What happens when you water it? They studied all the chemical changes. They applied machine learning, and they gave voices to the plants, right? So if you water a plant tells you thank you. If you shout at it, plant will also shout at you. So they are doing a great stuff with technology. So you can watch such projects, and surely that will bring your interest back in computer science and coding as well. So next thing Sachin asked is how to get information. So I think I told this thing earlier. Follow guys working in those firms on LinkedIn. You can ask your TNP coordinators to keep an eye on such information. You can visit career sites on your weekends at least once a week. So these are some things that you can do to get update, and you can follow other people like recruiters. You can directly follow recruiters of Google, Facebook, Microsoft on LinkedIn. So whenever they place any say any kind of information regarding it, you will get it. So use LinkedIn, try to use LinkedIn. It's a great place. Is it beneficial? It is right, or beneficial to do paid internship. So I don't think what the problem is with paid internship. I think you wanted to ask unpaid internship. Sandeep, can you confirm? And till then, Ananya asked 2 Coursera Udemy courses certificate may matter on your resume. So Ananya, actually, I would say course certifications don't matter that much if you put it on your resume, because you see, if I do any course, if I just need to spend 200 400 rupees, and Coursera is offering for free. Even you can apply financial aid. All everyone knows that thing. And when you put those certificates on your resume, recruiters won't be much impressed with it. What you can do, other thing is, whenever you learn, whenever you learn anything on Udemy, suppose you learned about, say, React.js, right? Why you need to put a certificate? Why you don't just make a website, deploy it on GitHub or something like there are so many free deployment services that you can use, and like Heroku you can use, and lots of things are there. So you just need to make some stuff using the knowledge that you learned in Udemy course or Coursera course, put it there, and put the link of that project over here. So that will make a difference, and it will matter on your resume. Otherwise, certificates won't matter. And even if you put certificates, interviewer can ask questions on those topics. So it's better you understand those things pretty well and make a project and put it then there. And one more thing, how to get manage these TSA practice in college semester. Okay, so Sandeep, the thing is, I think for college, all of us study for maybe 5 days earlier. Actually, I have an exam tomorrow, so people who are from my college, they might be knowing it. And I don't think you will have a lot of trouble managing college semester. And no one is asking you to be a 9 pointer, and you can manage up to 8.5. It's good. And what you can do is like on weekends when you have free time, you can cover much more topics of college which are, say, important for exams. And the thing is, you should be like in this world right now, you should be much more job oriented. So DSA is more important, but college sem should not be like you are getting backlogs. That is also not good. So you will have to keep a balance. But I think if you study 10 days before any college exam in this country, I think you can make it. So it won't be a big problem. Okay. Okay. Hi, Naveen. Then how to ask for referral? Okay. So if you are asking for referral on LinkedIn, the thing is, referrals, how it works is basically you will ask some employee who is already working in say some company, right? So if you directly message me on referral, suppose I'm working at Microsoft and you just message me, hey Rachit, I need a referral for Microsoft, right? Can you refer me? So what will happen is I don't know you. I don't know what projects have you done, what skills do you have. And if you do this thing, most of the people, if they see it, they won't refer it, and otherwise they won't see it. Okay, that's not the way you should ask referral. So how the flow should go is, first get connected to the person that you want from referral, right? So once you get connected, you can talk to them. You can like just general stuff. You can talk about the company, and like you can talk about, you can send ask them to review your resume if they have some time. Like you have to get familiar with them a bit, right? Just make some connection with them before asking them directly to refer. And once you are having some connection with them, that guy knows you, you know that guy, then only ask them that if resume is sufficient, if the work that you have done till now, which is represented in resume, is enough that he or she can refer you. Most probably they will refer you, but even if they don't refer you, they will tell you what you can do to improve the thing so that they can refer you later, right? So it should be that way. Don't directly ask for a referral. It won't work for most cases. For some cases it might work, but for mostly it won't work. And maybe you would have encountered some situations. So get familiar to them, talk to them earlier, and then send your resume for a review kind of thing. Once they review it, then ask them whether they can refer you to or not. Next thing is like in some tutorial in some company by paying them to learn something. Okay, so I think it was with reference to earlier question. Okay, so you are asking for training, not a paid internship, right? It's called a paid training, right? So yeah, Sandeep, the thing is, once you're paying someone, right, it's not wrong, right? You're paying your college, right? Suppose if you're in IITs or NITs, the fees is for general, I think it is around one, and it differs from college to college, 1 lakh per semester. So we are already paying for learning, right? So from a school system, we are paying in college right now, and that's how we pay some people to make us things learn, right? So there's nothing wrong in it, but the thing that should be kept in mind is, the first thing is whether you actually want to learn that thing. Suppose I told you machine learning is great, and you got a course of 30,000 from some guy. He's teaching machine learning right now in 30,000, and yesterday only you just got to know about machine learning. Okay, so that's totally wrong. I told you the first thing should be go explore things, see what machine learning can do, how machine learning basics work, how web development works, how Android works, what we can do with these things. Once you get some idea about it, right? Once you know whether you actually want to learn that thing or not, right? Then go to YouTube, go to blogs, go to websites, and try to learn the basics of it. Suppose as for HTML, CSS, if you're paying someone to teach you that, I think it should be not that way, because HTML, CSS, they are available free of cost on a lot of resources are there, a lot of videos are there, lots of blogs are there on it. So yeah, you might need to pay for some technologies which are not yet completely available in such a way that anyone can learn them. You might need teachers for them. You might need mentor for them. So firstly, try it on your own. When you're trying it on your own, you will get to learn a lot of stuff about it. You will build a habit of self-learning. And once you realize that it is not working, you cannot make it on your own. You are satisfied with that thought in your mind, then only pay someone, and pay only to that person. You can take first review about him or her or that organization. Once you're satisfied completely with it, that what service they are offering, it is worth money, then only pay it. Don't enroll in like any courses. Like you can try Udemy courses for earlier if you don't want to spend a lot of money. So I hope it helps you. Paying is not wrong, but first it should be self-learning. When you reach a point where self-learning is not possible, you think, or you need a mentor, then pay for it. Then that works. Again, then Naveen asked, Coding Ninjas enough to learn DS and Algo course to get internship. Okay, so Coding Ninjas is a good institute. I would say Coding Ninjas and Coding Blogs both are good, and like enough thing that you told enough, I would say they are teaching it, but I think enough is not with their course. And what you need to do is, once you learn the concepts from there or the questions you solve it from there, if you're just up to that course only, I think maybe you can get an internship, but it's better if you do problem solving apart from the courses. Whatever your course, it's not just up to Coding Ninjas or whatever. Suppose you took some course on Udemy and that mentor is giving you 2 questions for assignment, you are doing 2 questions for assignment, then it's like a school system going on, right? It shouldn't work that way. If he has gave you 2 questions, try to do 4 questions, right? Because somewhere around you there are some guys who are given 2 questions and they are doing 6 questions, right? So if you want to get some good internship, I would suggest, no doubt Coding Ninjas course is good, but I would suggest do questions to practice on your own as well. Just don't depend on any course, particularly whether it is from Coding Ninjas or anyone. You have to be the master of your own. The next thing is how to decide your area of expertise. Okay. Do we have to try them all before trying the master one? Okay. So I read your question. So okay. So Soumya, so the thing is, to decide your area of expertise, actually you will have to try things, right? Maybe it may sound like a wastage of time to try other things out, but the thing is, suppose I told you machine learning and data science like are going to be, for the next 10 years they are going to be a hot job topic, right? So yeah, actually they are going to be, but the thing is, when you haven't explored things on your own, you are yet dependent upon me to tell you the things, or dependent upon someone else to make you learn, right? To make you decide your career, right? So exploration won't take a couple of months for you. I will tell you how it works. Say if you're in, suppose, first year or second year, that's the best time to decide what you want to learn for, say, for third year or fourth year. And things never stop. Suppose maybe tomorrow I get a thought that I want to learn blockchain, okay, and maybe cryptocurrency, something like that. So learning never stops, right? And what we have to do over here is, how exploration works is, you watch some tutorial on YouTube, some interactive tutorial on YouTube, which won't make you bored, right? Some cool stuffs which are made with machine learning, right? Some cool stuff that data science can do, and like web development which can do. So that way you explore things. And suppose you know machine learning, right? You are a great programmer, or say suppose learning engineer, and I ask you how to write suppose something in a paragraph in HTML, right? So if you cannot answer it, and I think it might not be good. So because these domains, when you see like machine learning, data science, web development, like they might seem at first that they're different. Web development is completely different, data science is completely different. But tell me one thing. Suppose you know machine learning, okay? You have built some machine learning model, right? Now where are you going to deploy it? It is currently on your local system, right? But you cannot keep it forever on your local system, right? Suppose you want to put it on some website so that others can see it, others can use it, right? Suppose I made a machine learning model which, given some input, it will predict the next number, right? Suppose a sequence predictor kind of thing. So you want some other guys to use it, right? So you must know basics of web, right? How to deploy something, right? How to make a basic web page from where I will take the input from the user, which I will feed into the my machine learning model, right? So if you see, computer science has lots of domains, but these domains are interconnected actually to one another. And I'm not saying that you have to learn all of them, but exploration should never be like something burden kind of thing. The more you explore, the better you will know how. Suppose what I can do with machine learning, right? If you know web development, you can probably make some, say, stock prediction app using machine learning. Algorithm is built using machine learning, but the interface and the backend interaction, they all are built using Android development and web development, right? So nothing in this world works alone. We all need help from one another, and that's the case with the domains as well. So I would suggest explore things, and you don't have to try them all before trying, but at least try 2-3 things like web, Android, machine learning, and then learn basics of things, and then choose your master one, and you can master your skills in it. Okay, so Okay, so any other question? Let me see. Okay, so Naveen actually replied then. Okay, should we ask for referral before applying ourselves for that job or first apply then ask for referral? Correct way. Okay. Okay, so Manish actually for some of the guys actually I'm also in my fourth year right now, right? So uh, for some of the companies I think I actually some students when I talk to them they say some employees ask them to send their resume before applying actually on the portal, and for some it works in a different way. You first apply and then you give the resume to that person. So what I would suggest you is don't get into that stuff, right? Just directly ask the person whom you're contacting, right? Suppose someone is working at Microsoft in a particular team or in a particular something, he knows much better than anyone else what's going on there, how things work, right? So similarly, someone works at Amazon, someone works at Google, they know how things work over there, right? So what you can do is you just ask them directly what is the right way to do for a referral. Should I need to first apply, then I need to tell you, or should I tell you first, I give you resume, then I should apply? Just ask them this thing, and I think it will work for you. Okay, and then okay, so I think okay, so no more questions as of now. If anyone has any other query, you may ask. Otherwise, I think the session is has gone twice as long as it was supposed to be. But I hope you guys enjoyed it and you got to learn something from it.
Yeah, I think it was a great session because I think all of your doubts are clear. If you have some more doubts, you can reach out to Rachit Bhaiya on LinkedIn, and you can ask there too. But I think it was a great session, and thank you so much, Rachit Bhaiya, to for giving this great session and clearing all our doubts and all our things. So yeah,
Yeah, okay. Actually, I also enjoyed. This was a great thing that I could have done in my weekend, because if any of you guys learn something from it and it makes your life much easier and you do something great, I will be more than happy to know that. And you can also reach out to me on LinkedIn, and whatever help do you guys need, you can reach out to me. And Hitesh, is there any way that PPT could be available to these guys as well?
think I'll share the link to all the attendees. So I'll just put it in a Google Cloud or something, and I'll share the link. I'll just mail them all. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Great. It will work. So, okay, guys, I think that's from my side. And if you need any help from me, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and you can read my blog as well. So, I will be more than happy to help you guys, and uh, have a great day, and uh, stay blessed and like do something great in your lives.
thank you so much. Yeah. Okay. And I think we should end this session. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you all for attending. So thank you so much.
Thank you all.